Hey guys, Joe Madden, the Joe Madden Sports Podcast. I'm joined this afternoon by Danny Burke, Vison host for the Rush Hour and Chicago CityCast, now partnered with Bet Rivers. Danny, how's the day starting?
It's going good, Joe. Appreciate you having me on. Just another day in the business, right? Handicapping all the different sports. Got a couple baseball games I had some interest in that I'll be talking about on the show tonight. And of course, the Stanley Cup postseason with the Lightning and the Rangers should be a fun game and a fun series. I mean, I'm not sure we can get as many goals as we did last night, so it might be a little bit of a different outcome. But yeah, still just another exciting day. Looking forward to new things to bet on and new angles to approach while doing so.
Well, it definitely is an interesting and exciting industry to be in. I want to know how you got started, Danny.
Yeah, so it's kind of a long story, so I'll try to keep it somewhat short. But basically, I've always been a diehard sports fan my whole life. And when it was clear that I wasn't going to be playing it at a professional level, I mean, obviously, it really wasn't going to even come close in any regard. But I always wanted to get involved in it in terms of my career. So that naturally led to me wanting to do broadcasting from a young age, whether it was going to be play-by-play or doing sports talk radio or something around that realm. That's what I always had interest in. So after high school, so I grew up here in the Chicagoland area, and I went to school at the University of Nebraska, and they actually have a pretty solid broadcasting program, which I wasn't aware of, as most people aren't, because you're not really considering going to Lincoln, Nebraska when you're growing up here in the Chicagoland area. But look, they have an amazing program. Got just great teachers that helped me out. My peers were awesome, and we got really solid experience right from the get-go. So again, long story short, was just going through the journalism school there. I was working at the ESPN affiliate station in Lincoln, and even after I graduated, I stayed there for about 6 months after, being a producer / co-host. And not to knock anything with Lincoln, Nebraska, but basically growing up in the bigger city, I'm like, all right, I don't really want to spend my career just solely focusing in on the Cornhuskers, right? There's so much more that I want to talk about. And I always had the tie to sports betting. Just growing up, my friends and I were always gambling, whether it was playing poker, just betting on miscellaneous things, getting started with bookies, kind of like your usual routine to getting in the industry in the first place. So my sister then, because she does photography, she's a couple years older than me. She actually moved out to Las Vegas to pursue more opportunities for herself. So I visited her, naturally fell in love with Las Vegas because it featured everything I loved: gambling, sports. They had the Golden Knights already in town. They had the Raiders coming. So I'm like, all right, why not take kind of, pun intended, a gamble here and go out there and see what I can do. So I get out there and basically land a gig with Vison with some help from a buddy out in the West Coast, and worked my way up from being social media, from doing producing, and then going on to hosting. And I was kind of doing, a bunch of shows on the network, and then the pandemic hit. And, we were going through some tough times like everybody was with the lack of sports and whatnot. And, kind of went back to producing with Gil Alexander on A Numbers Game. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with him. And then when summer was kind of coming back in full swing and we were looking forward to football coming back in the mix, Vison was expanding out to Chicago, and I had already had a show that I had been doing out in Vegas called Bet on Chicago, which goes out on an affiliate station here. So I'd already kind of been that Chicago guy. So they're like, hey, we're starting a show at the Bet Rivers Sportsbook in Des Plaines. Would you be interested? I'm like, hell yeah, absolutely I would. That's been my dream, to do sports broadcasting back in Chicago. So that basically landed me here, and yeah, just been back ever since August 2020 and been loving it every single day.
That sounds amazing. It's such a great story how you got into this industry. Now, I have to say, I was checking out your Twitter. You've got Philip Rivers on there. Are you a diehard Bolts fan like I am?
So look, it's kind of funny. I do enjoy some nice Philip Rivers commentary. I don't know how you knock on the guy. I mean, on the field, I know he's kind of like nitpicky and everything, and he's, I don't know, just maybe a pain in the ass to some guys, but he's just kind of like so quirky and corny that you can't not love the guy. And it was almost like an inside joke. My friends and I just would like root for him and the Chargers, but I actually do like the Chargers a lot. This year, I took a Super Bowl flyer on them, I think like 25-1. But in terms of the Philip Rivers picture, I just thought it was a legendary picture, just him being such a clean-cut guy and then just getting a picture in front of a bunch of nuns. So I just thought that was a perfect background banner. So I am a diehard Bears fan, but I'll give the Chargers my number 2. So I'm definitely rooting for him out of the AFC.
Okay, I love to hear that. Yeah, I just cracked up when I saw that picture. I was like, he either likes Philip Rivers or is making fun of him in this picture. I didn't know which. So
No, it's
I'm
all
glad.
love.
All love. Okay, so the NBA finals are here. Any thoughts on this, Danny? Where are you going with this? We got the Golden State Warriors rolling in as the favorite, a total that's actually climbed from 211 to 212.5. Any thoughts on the game tomorrow or the series as a whole?
Yeah, I started getting into this series, I guess Monday morning is when I started capping it, but I really like the Warriors in this spot, and it seems like it's kind of the easy side to go with, but really a lot of people I've talked to throughout VSiN and all the guests and whatnot, it seems like a lot of people are liking the value with Boston, and it's completely understood. But the way that I'm approaching it is you saw what happened with Boston these last 2 series, right? I mean, they went to 7 games in each. That takes a toll on a team, especially a team that is younger and doesn't have as much championship experience like a Warriors team that has had an easier path to get here. And they almost blew that game, or they did lose that game 5 at home against Milwaukee, right? They had the 9-point lead with a couple minutes left. They lost. Okay, cool. They come back, win the next 2 games. Great. That's a testament to how solid they can be. Well, against Miami, you beat that team that's banged up. You lose game 6 at home. You make it harder on yourselves. You have a double-digit lead with 3 minutes to go in game 7. You do hold on. But again, I'm looking at all of this and I'm going, I can't fully trust this team. And I've never really fully trusted Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Marcus Smart. Great core, completely understood how dominant they can be. But the Warriors are a completely different beast. They can kill you on both ends of the floor. Their defense is really underrated. And offensively, they're way deeper than Milwaukee and Miami is, because if Steph Curry has an off night, guess what? You got Klay Thompson. If Klay Thompson has an off night, guess what? You got Jordan Poole, who's been a rising star. And if Andrew Wiggins can play how he did last series against Dallas on both ends of the floor, this team is really solid all throughout. So again, I think it took a toll on Boston. I like the Warriors in game 1. I like them for the series. I know you're not getting the best number here, but to me, Golden State is still the right side, and especially because I'm thinking they win game 1, that the price then is just going to get really steep in favor of the Warriors. But if you want kind of an alternative angle to take this approach, but look at the MVP market and consider Steph Curry plus 125 is the best number I saw. Look, it's a narrative-driven award. He's the top dog on this team. He hasn't won it in the 3 past finals appearances and went to Iguodala and then Kevin Durant twice. This team is out there to prove they can win without KD. They said they were going to make the championship last year after they weren't even in the postseason, and I believe Steph Curry will be at the top of the list for finals MVP. So, yeah, I'm kind of all over the Warriors for this series.
Yeah, I don't blame you being all over the Warriors here. They're definitely the healthier team. Any concern with how much rest they've had, though?
Yeah, I think it is a tad bit concerning to a certain extent. I mean, you look at that Lightning and Rangers series, for example, with hockey. That's what kind of scares me in game 1, backing the Lightning. Like, really quick, I like the Lightning in the series, but not as much confidence with them for game 1 because of how much layoff they've had. But with the Warriors, again, kind of to what I was saying before, I think this team can overcome it for a couple of reasons, being that they have that championship pedigree and that they also have the home court advantage coming right out of the gate. And they have one of the best home court advantages in the NBA. I know we kind of discredited a tad bit, but it's been pretty apparent throughout the postseason, at least, and Golden State has been one of, if not the best home court advantage. So I'm not too concerned about it with Golden State. Again, I think it's more so going to be a factor that Boston just played 2 exhausting series that went to 7 games back to back. So I think Golden State, the rest is actually going to prove to be an advantage for them. They're ready for this moment. They've been through it, and I think they capitalize off of it immediately.
Absolutely. I like the way you're thinking with that. Now let's jump into that NHL game that you quickly touched on. The Tampa Bay Lightning, like you said, coming off tons of rest. New York Rangers coming off the series. No one really expected them to win. The underdog in that series played absolutely phenomenal. Are you rolling with the fact that the New York Rangers have momentum and Tampa should come out rustier in this one then?
It's so tough because Tampa Bay has been this team this postseason that we have also been discrediting, at least in terms of the betting market, I guess you could say, the odds makers. And they've been an underdog in the first two series, yet they just swept one of the best offenses in the NHL. Vasilevsky allowed 3 goals in a 4-game series against one of the top offenses. And now you're going against a Rangers team that offensively, they looked fine, just fine against the Hurricanes, but remember who they were going up against. Antti Ranta, who is the backup, who also couldn't play on the road to save his life and obviously save the series. Vasilevsky is a completely different animal this postseason, and that's what's going to be the difference here. It's not going to be, and I don't want to say walk in the park because that wouldn't be the right thing to say going against the Hurricanes, but again, Tampa Bay is a completely different unit. They are more disciplined. They will not commit as many penalties as you saw the Hurricanes do, especially right away. They will take advantage of power plays that they have presented to them, unlike the Hurricanes. Now, I know they're missing Braden Point still as Tampa Bay, so that could hinder their offense a little bit, but I do think they are the better team. And the only way in my mind that the Rangers win this series is if Shesterkin just plays like a god, basically. Like he has to be outstanding and have out-of-body experiences. And he pretty much has had that throughout the regular season and up to this point. So it's not going to be shocking if he does. But I give the advantage offensively to Tampa Bay. I give the advantage with the experience, of course, to Tampa Bay. And goaltending, again, Vasilevsky has been as good, if not better, than Shesterkin up to this point. But because of how much time they have had off, and we saw what happened game 1 against the Maple Leafs, I am a little timid to back them in the spot. But an angle that seems to be getting a lot of love in the market, and really just a lot of love based on what we've seen from these two teams, and rightfully so, has been looking at the under. So under 5.5, I think, would be a viable option to bet in this game. The thing that scares you a little bit is just pulling the goalie, and that's going to happen in any hockey game. But in the postseason, they tend to do it a little bit sooner rather than later. So I could understand why that would give you some trepidation, and maybe instead you go with the first period under 1.5. But I think that I might have a little bit more confidence, full game under 5.5 goals scored. If you don't like that, I do have the small lean to Tampa Bay. And even in the series, look, you could bet the -1.5 on the series spread up to about +110. But if you think this game's a little sketchy, maybe you wait and you'll get better value on it. But at the end of the day, I do think Tampa Bay is the better team and will make their way to another Stanley Cup Finals appearance.
Oh, man, seeing Tampa in there again. I don't know if anyone can stop them. Who do you think could stop them coming out of the Avalanche and Oilers series?
Yeah, it's got to be the Avalanche. And again, that's the easy answer here, but they are a team that can match up with them very well because Colorado, when you look at their offense, yeah, Edmonton is just as good, if not, again, better. I mean, they have more individual pieces, I guess, but Colorado's the better built team all throughout. We'll see what the stats is with Darcy Kemper with his injury that he suffered. That's kind of, something you got to keep in mind. But, assuming they get past the Oilers, that's going to be a lot of time that he could, rest, and depending, again, how severe his injury is. But again, it's got to be Colorado. That's a team that can compete with them the best. But in that series, if that were to come to fruition, look, I give the goaltending advantage to Vasilevsky. Probably just your overall roster. Colorado still gets the nod, but what can Kemper do? Because I think he's just a slightly above average goalie. And the stats will kind of tell you that. His win-loss record, he looks outstanding because he's got one of the best rosters surrounding him. But if you put him on an average Joe type of team, he would not be that great of a goalie. Vasilevsky could succeed on another squad, I believe, and I think the stats will lead you to believe that and show that to be factual. So that's kind of what makes that series so fascinating if it happens. And if you do think it happens, you can get Tampa Bay like +260 or +280 right now. And if you have that ticket now going into that series, you're going to be feeling pretty good because that price is not going to be the same if that happens to be the matchup. And again, the reason I like the Avalanche over Edmonton, I do think Edmonton makes it a series. I bet over 5.5 games this morning at about +105. Look, you can't trust Mike Smith at the end of the day. Hopefully they put in Koskinen and, they trust him a little bit more so. But again, the offense is good enough to compete against this Avalanche team, but just Colorado's deeper and better throughout, so they'll probably find a way.
Yeah, I think Colorado definitely finds a way as well. I agree with you that what we see out of Mike Smith, he really is. He's good one day, bad another. I expect him to be better in the second game. I think we see him have another blunder, though, in this series. And I like what you're saying. I think it does go deep into this one, 6 or 7 for this series, and it's going to be phenomenal to watch because, as you saw, we saw lots of goals last night, so definitely not one I'm rushing to bet any unders in. Yourself?
Oh, yeah. There's no chance, right? I think it's like you're betting the over, you're staying away. But even if you're betting the over now, I mean, it's going to be adjusted so heavily to probably 7 or even 7.5, which is just obscene to see in a hockey game that I really don't want to get involved with it. But if you did, I guess a way you could approach it would be, hey, maybe they have a slower starting first period or second period. There's kind of a stall in any of these games. Then maybe you could take advantage of a better in-game number if you still like the over. But I kind of think this is just going to be a better series to bet pre-flop, at least just going with the sides. And again, I mean, you've seen how good Edmonton can be offensively and not being able to trust Kemper that anything can come through. So you could even look at some reverse puck lines for some value if you think Edmonton is going to snag a game in the next one or at home. I think there's going to be a lot of value to be had with this Edmonton team because, like I was just saying, I liked over 5.5 before this series, but I was looking at game one and I'm like, you know what? Colorado probably takes game one. And since they're already the big favorite, that means if they win this game, the over 5.5 will be more plus money at this point. I thought it was going to be even money, but at Bet Rivers, they give you plus 105 because, again, the assumption was they were the big favorite, meaning if they win game one, they have a better chance to win in 5 games or less. But I still don't think that's going to be the case because of how high scoring this series clearly looks to be heading toward. That means the chances of a team like an underdog like the Oilers winning could absolutely be higher. So, yeah, I think it goes deep, and I think there could be value on Edmonton on a game-to-game basis.
Okay, I love it. I love these series going deep. I want to see a lot more hockey. It's going to be sad when we go to the break. But Danny, thank you for joining me here today. Can you let everyone know where they can follow you as well as when your shows air and where to catch them at?
Yeah, absolutely. So my main show is Rush Hour on VSiN. If you're in the Chicagoland area, you can catch it on the Marquee Sports Network, the same station the Cubbies are playing on. But it's Monday through Friday, 5 to 6 p.m. Central Time. And then I got my podcast, the Chicago CityCast, release about 4 episodes a week wherever you get your podcasts available. And then also another show, Bet on Chicago, but that's on a local radio station here in the Windy City. So if you're not here, you're probably not listening to it. But nevertheless, at Danny Burke 5, I tweet out all the links, and that's probably the best way you can get in touch.
Well, thank you, Danny. All the best in all of your bets, all of your shows. And I really appreciate your time today on the Joe Madden Sports Podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Take care.